Faith Points Radio, FPRN.
From Faith Points Radio Network, we welcome you to Bound to Excel with Dr. Michael Lane. We believe you will enjoy the content of today's program that will be filled with information for spirit, mind, and body. Now, here's your host, author, speaker, and counselor, Dr. Michael Lane.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm glad you have joined us right here on Bound to Excel and whatever other page we may put this video on. It's good to see all of you today. Well, I don't see you, but it's good to know that you're out there. And it's all a work of faith and a labor of love. That's all I can say about it. Before we get started, I want to tell you that we have a brand new radio station, and it's on the air now. If you go to faithaudio.org, faithaudio.org, and that will be Faith Points Radio, FPRN, which is Faith Points Radio Network. And I am just glad to have that up. It's been a whole new learning curve. And, back in my day of doing radio, well, it was strictly, you had a room full of equipment, Chris Schuller, and it was just an interesting thing. You figured out how to work all of that. Well, now that has all been downsized and reduced to a computer here in front of us. And I just, I'm trying to figure out files. What do we do with this, that, and the other? And I finally got a lot of that figured out. So that's worked out pretty good. So be sure to tune in to Faith Points Radio. And as I say, we are from coast to coast and border to border and around the world. This is FPRN. Thank you so much for listening. Well, my special guest today is Pastor Chris Schuller from Las Vegas, Nevada. And I just don't know. All I can say is there's plenty of ministry to be done in that city, as there are in other cities also. So anyway, he is the pastor of Epiphany Episcopal Church, and I'm just glad to have him on board with me today. And Chris Schuller, welcome to Bound to Excel.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, it's good to have you. And this page is about my new book called Born to Win, Bound to Excel, 9 Keys to Unlock Your Dream Factor. And the reason I have done that, and the reason I'm writing that, is because I've seen these tattoos and other things out there that says born to lose. And, that is not what we're put in this world for. We're not here to lose. We're here to win and to excel in what God has for us. So that being said, well, I tell a little bit about yourself, Chris. Thank you.
Okay. I'm definitely, as many clergy people are, I'm a person that's had a number of different careers. All I did basically till I was 30 years old was sing, and in various bands all in the Midwest. And there's an expression, Pastor Michael, that a little bit of talent is a dangerous thing. I had just enough talent as a singer and a songwriter and a guitar player to keep myself doing that for a full decade till I was about 30 years old. And sort of at the end of it, I met a woman and we got married and had 2 babies. And what she and I did to keep ourselves and the kids fed was had a hand-painted clothing business in Key West, Florida. Wow. And that's a nice place to live. I don't know if you've been to Key West. I
haven't.
I always used to joke about Key West. The only reason you would think that Key West, Florida is part of the United States is we use the same currency. Again, it was a nice 10 or 12 years there. Our business did fine, and it's in a way, it's fun to raise children in a premier resort destination of the planet and be able to go to the beach every day. And it's your own business. You make your own schedule. It's wonderful. But sort of at a certain point, I was a little bit worried that both my daughters would only see women as in a resort town as either cocktail waitresses, strippers. We lived less than a block and a half from a huge strip club. And the only women that they would see in their lives besides these doing a job was their mom painting clothing along with their dad, or their school teachers. Some of them were women, but I just thought the huge majority of them were modeling women as working in industries that really aren't the majority way that women make a living. So we started thinking, where would we like to raise our kids as they get older, assuming it's not Key West? And interestingly enough, my wife discovered at the time, she said, because I was so involved with so many churches, she kind of figured out, she goes, am I wrong, or are you becoming a pastor? And I said, definitely the former. You are nothing but wrong. And of course, 2 years later, I was in seminary, as many of us resist the call. And since then, I had a little parish in Jessup, Georgia for 4 years, beautiful little town in South Georgia. And things went so well there. You know, I'd like to think we pleased God. There was no doubt that the church grew enormously, both in numbers, in faith, and finances. And because of that, I was offered jobs all over the United States after I'd been there a couple of years. And I went to a very, very large parish in St. Petersburg, Florida, where I was for about 4 years. We thrived there, but I can't say that actually my spirit did. It was more admin and no fault of the parishioners, but there was just often felt like dragging weights up a hill there. And after a certain number of years, I really felt a calling my hunch was that if Jesus were to come back in whatever it was, 2010, 2012, I was convinced that the same Jesus who stopped really hanging out in temples and synagogues pretty early in his ministry and instead preached from lakesides and mountaintops would probably be, if he came back, that he would be a writer and somehow involved in screenwriting, directing to get his message to the biggest number of people possible. I mean, a similar thinking probably has you now on TV and radio. We want to get the love of God and the joy of relationship with God to as many people as possible. And God has provided us with brains that we now have. I mean, look at the picture. I bet the camera that's shooting me right now was manufactured for less than a dime. And the resolution is as good as what a TV camera was in 1985. And that TV camera would have been $100,000 in 1985 money. So we're a brilliant species, and God gave us this brain. Why not use the technological stuff at our disposal for God's glory? So anyway, off I went to Los Angeles, and I was hanging out at a friend's film production company and writing things. And then I guess if this might be more bio than you need, about 3 years ago, I pulled right in front of a car and got T-boned. In my defense, he was doing over 50 miles an hour in a school zone. But it doesn't change the fact that I pulled right in front of him. And well, Michael, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm one of those guys that had a near-death experience. And I don't even call it near death. I was temporarily dead. I didn't just see the light at the end of the tunnel. I was fully in the light, completely in that place which I recognized to be as the place where I had once come from. It was a homecoming, not go someplace for the first time. It's weird. I got there, I thought, how could someplace this familiar be forgotten? Because once I got there, I'm like, oh, I'm here again. And the communication with the divine, with God, is so perfect. I can't even describe it in words. It doesn't take any time. It's just a sorry, forgot to mute my phone. And God sort of let me know instantaneously I'd be going back, and God expected me to do a few things differently and to do them fearlessly. And basically that's been the story of my life for the last 3 years. I had to do physical therapy hours of every day if I ever even hoped to get out of a wheelchair. And during that time, I did 3 or 4 hours of physical therapy every day. I wrote a book, and I ate, and I slept. And that's all I did for about a year and a half straight. And I did that mostly in Las Vegas, which I want to defend. Las Vegas, when I came here, people go, isn't that a weird choice? And I said, well, I don't gamble. I'm not interested in showgirls. That's not where God's calling me right now. I just need to spend this many hours a day recovering. So I actually jokingly said, I'm going to Las Vegas because it's the perfect place for me to be a monk. And somewhere along the way, I thought, you know what?
What a better thing.
I'd like a worshiping community. I Googled Episcopal Church because I still had my collar. And I just thought, if I find 10 people there that I believe are really praying to Jesus and God when they say the Lord's Prayer, I'm going to stay. And boy, did Epiphany knock it out of the park. It's just an incredible community of faith.
Tremendous. Yeah, you know, it's incredible from a human standpoint how that we are led in this life. And it's just an amazing thing. It's an amazing process to go through. Here we are, flesh and bone, and yet we are serving and living for someone that we don't see with these eyes, but we sense and feel within us. We know his spirit is there. We know that his Holy Spirit dwells within us. We accept all of that by faith. We truly know. And then for someone to have an experience such as what you had by having gone through that tunnel and living in that light for just, even if it's momentary, you know, that's an experience you don't soon forget.
No.
So, I wouldn't think so. I know that at the age of 11, I was dying of rheumatic fever, and the doc said there wasn't anything he could do for me. And so, you know, we prayed, and of all things, a minister on radio comes on one afternoon. I've been laying on this bed for 3 weeks. And this is the reason I can write Born to Win, Bound to Excel, because I was laying there. My body was swollen out of proportion due to the rheumatic fever. Well, it still is out of proportion, but certainly not because of rheumatic fever.
Proportions in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah. Anyway, this preacher comes on one afternoon. I remember because my grandmother would tune him in every day, and he was a good preacher. And he stopped the program and said, "There's someone in Radioland, a young man, that is listening to this broadcast, and the doctors have given up on you. But I've come to tell you that Jesus came to give life and to give it more abundantly. I'm going to pray the prayer of faith. Then I'm going to count to 3, and I want you up and walking at the count of 3. And he got to 3, and I stood, and I started walking. And hey, when my grandpa had left for work that morning, I was in the bed. When he came back, I was out on the front porch hanging out and fully clothed. And here I am. Now, that was in 1961. Here, this is 2020. And I'm still here. And, you know, God is so gracious to us. And so we talk about faith, you know, but the sad thing is, I think many people have failed to realize the beauty of walking in faith and have failed to understand how precious that is. Now, here we are in 2020, and I would say God has certainly prepared you for 2020 because, you know, we look at this, and as you had stated earlier, well, I don't know if Jesus is going to come this year or next, but, you know, here we are. And so we look at this and we wonder, okay, this pandemic has spread through the world, and we've lost a lot of people. I personally have lost a couple of friends that have died to this COVID-19 thing. And so it has brought about such enormous with businesses and with the church. So how are you and Epiphany handling this whole pandemic thing?
Well, as you know, Michael, one has to be deeply aware that a one-size-fits-all approach to ministry right now is going to exclude a pretty significant portion of your church members and world one way or the other. So we figured out very early that there's, of course, always a range in church work, from the people who are there every time you open the door to the people who just come on Christmas and Easter. And their spiritual expectations, needs, and practices vary enormously. I would suggest, and I think many would agree, that COVID accentuated these differences and created even additional differences. Here's an example, for instance, in one of our early live streams. I work with a colleague, Rick O'Brien, and we decided we would do these live streams very regularly, very early on. And the nice thing about it was we'd get feedback literally in message bubbles during the live stream, and that we could reread them later. We quickly figured out that the range of sensibilities of our parishioners had widened still further. For instance, there's an older couple here. They adore one another. They have a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood where Las Vegas butts up to a nice part of town called Henderson. They adore each other. They can afford to have their food delivered. They both like to cook. In some ways, they've never been happier. But they also, like some of us pastors, they have the sensitivity to not be calling their friends, go, isn't COVID great? They, of course, know COVID isn't great. But if they were perfectly candid, as they are when they're talking to their pastor, and they're not talking to radio land or TV land like we are, they'll say, I got to tell you, Chris, if COVID never ends, we had enough money to live for a long time when we moved to Vegas, to Henderson. It's fine by us, but they also are sensitive enough to know that there are people who are also in their 70s or 80s who are widowed, whose children don't live in town, or they might even be estranged. And the amount of solitude to a point of being painful, loneliness that COVID has caused. So in some ways, some of the happy people are happier, and the less happy people are far less happy. So the amount of depression, and it's even difficult to deal with the depression. A lot of people can't go to their doctor and ask for their antidepressant milligram amount to be increased. They can't even get a doctor's appointment. And of course, you and I believe that there's a broader way, and as your testimony just bore witness to, there are ways to heal and grow that go beyond doctors and pharmacology and surgery. And as you've also, I'm sure, noticed, during COVID, we're expected to do more and do better for more people, we clergy. So I've never been busier than the last 5 months. And my colleague, Rick, the weird thing is we were talking about in January, there's been quite a bit of growth recently at Epiphany. But in December and January, I said, Rick, I don't know where this hunch is coming from, because I don't even think it's wishful thinking. The church is growing in spirit, in strength, in numbers, in witness, in outreach, in all ways measurable, visible and invisible. Couldn't be happier. I said, but I have this sense that this giant burst is coming soon. And he said, it's strange. I've been getting the same thing in my prayers, that there's this huge something that's coming, and I don't know what it is. We just couldn't figure it out. Well, 2 months later, mid-March, our intuition came exactly true. And we basically have doubled the amount we work, and 90% of it is virtual.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I have to agree with you, Chris, that things have definitely changed. And quite honestly, I don't know that I would have been doing this amount of live streaming, or even would have been prompted to get the radio station up and running. But it was a perfect time to do it. I don't know about you, but I feel a real urgency. There is a real urgency inside my spirit that says, hey, you really need to get with it, kid, and get this thing going. And, the resources have come about. We've gained a new family, mother, father with 4 kiddos. And it's just amazing. Now we're doing this online. They had started coming before we had to abandon meeting together, and corporately, but they're still with us. And, and it's just beautiful to see that happen. So yeah, we definitely live in a time that is challenging, but a time that also speaks to each and every one of us that it's really time to get real with your salvation experience. You talk about it. And of course, I know that means different ways of coming about salvation for different people. I get that. There are different ways for that to happen depending on the church you were in. As I told you before we went on the air, I was raised by grandparents. One set of grandparents were Lutheran. The other set of grandparents were Pentecostal. And depending on where I was, I sometimes got confused as to what to raise my hands or to be quiet. It was just one of those things. So, but it was okay. And, that really has been a great foundation for me, because I can go anywhere and worship with anyone. My dear friend here in Greensburg, Indiana, Father John Meyer, is the priest at St. Mary's, and and I go there for a mass, which is a good thing, and I feel comfortable. I feel at home. I go to maybe a Baptist church, and I just say, okay, Lord, this is wonderful that we can fellowship. And I served in the United Methodist Church for 14 years. And so I learned that it is important to open those doors of fellowship. I think that is so key to us surviving in this day and age. And of course, our fellowship doesn't mean that we get together for those chicken dinners right now, not collectively. But hey, I'll tell you what, we can go through the drive-through at KFC or wherever, or Popeyes. There you go, Popeyes. And we can bring it home and sit down and do this. And while you're eating your chicken there, I'll eat my here. And hey, we'll have fellowship. I don't know, but that's an idea. Maybe we can do that on Zoom, Chris.
Yeah, my colleague Rick O'Brien has every Thursday early evening at 5 p.m. virtual wine and cheese. And in the last 5 months, if he invites 10 households per week, he's managed to go through the majority of the church directory. And that's been a really nice thing. And of course, some people have a beer, some people have a soda, some people have 2 glasses of wine and no cheese, and it's all good.
and no one has to worry about, oh, gee, did I go over the limit and drive home? So that's good.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we're learning to do fellowship, church fellowship, differently. And I think that is something that has given us at least a knee-jerk reaction to how we do church, because fellowship is a big part of church life. I don't care what church you're in, fellowship, getting together, doing your thing, that is just part of it. So now we're having to do things differently. And I'm certainly learning at 70 years of age how to do all of this stuff, and I love it. I really love it. Because I've been around technology all my life in some form or another. And so this is just working out real well. But it's trying to get people to understand that as we do church differently, you still need to support your church, your home church, and support it with your prayers, none less, and with your dedication financially. It all goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah, we've been very blessed on that here at Epiphany. So the great a significant majority of our parishioners give automatically monthly, ACH or direct from their checking account. And we've also been blessed. We actually have had several new members join during our virtual ministry. Also, I have to I have to say this very carefully, Michael, because the official position is that all services have been suspended. Yet everybody, including the bishop of the diocese, knows that almost every parish is doing a virtual live stream on Sundays.
Sure.
That's the only thing most Episcopal parishes are doing in Nevada. Besides the cathedral in Reno and Epiphany here in Las Vegas, we're doing 11 things per week, not one. But we had two members who only just got to know us 2.5, 3 months ago through our virtual ministry, 23-year-old man, a 22-year-old woman, and I just baptized them 2 weeks ago at our virtual live stream.
Tremendous.
And I didn't put water in the font. I left it in a pitcher so that when I poured it over their head, the water from the first person wouldn't go on the second. I was wearing rubber gloves. We all had a great big Purell party for hand sanitizing before we did it, and they socially distanced. Their godparents stood 8 or 10 feet away, and because I had thought of every possible detail, the bishop gave his blessing on the baptisms. But I'll tell you this, there have not been very many baptisms in the Episcopal Church in the last 5 months. But we've had them here at Epiphany, and they're very active, wonderful, faithful members.
That's tremendous.
Of our church.
That's tremendous. That reminds me of what I heard Robert H. Schuller over at Crystal Cathedral. I heard him say this about baptism. He was at a book signing, and he was in a mall, and he's sitting there signing these books, meeting the public, and this lady walks up to him and hands him a book, and he signs it, and she says, "I want to be baptized." He says, "Oh, great, okay." She says, "No, right now." Okay, so he looks around. This mall didn't even have a fountain in it. Some of those have a little water fountain.
Right.
The only thing he had, Chris, was a can of Coca-Cola. And, typical Schuller fashion. I don't know what it is with you Schulers. Well, you come up with ideas. It must be in the genetics. That's all I can say. But he baptized her right there in the mall in front of God and everybody. So there were plenty of witnesses to her baptism. He said she walked away from there almost enlightened so much. She had a new spring to her step because she had fulfilled what God wanted her to do. And because Schuller did what God calls we pastors to do.
Right.
And granted, it was with Coke, but hey, it's still water.
Pharisees out there, Michael, that would say that no, if it wasn't water, the baptism wasn't valid, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But I think God is more powerful. I don't really think our God is limited by which liquid. And I think that spring in her step to which you referred is very much God's presence with her, and that her faith was not going to be inhibited by haters or doubters.
Exactly. Well, we find that Bartimaeus, if you remember that little story where this blind guy by the name of Bartimaeus, he cries out. He determines this is Jesus walking by, and he cries out to him. And the Bible tells us that the crowd, shh, hush, no, come on, settle down. And then he cries even that much more and gets Jesus' attention, and Jesus calls him. Says, well, what do you want me to do for you? And that right there tells you that when God calls your name, basically, hey, you get up, go do what you need to do, and he provides a way. That was not in by the Pool of Siloam, nor was it in a temple, but it certainly was in a place where Bartimaeus knew that he needed to just trust in the Lord, and that's what he did.
And his
Yeah,
persistence.
so I think so. By the way, yeah, exactly, his persistence. Yeah. By the way, not to get off the subject, but how are you Schullers related, if at all?
Well, I can answer that exactly, Pastor, because it involves a little bit of a confession. Anytime you see a Schuller that has two L's in her or his name,
right,
what you know is that you're looking at a Schuller who has a relative that came from outside of Germany in what is now part of Romania. There, during famines in the past, Germans would leave if there was a drought in Germany. The poorest Germans, to avoid starvation, would go into Eastern Europe. And all, without exception, every 2L Schuller comes from close to where Count Dracula's legend lives, in the Carpathian Mountains in what is now Romania, which used to be called Transylvania.
Oh, my goodness.
It gets worse, or it gets better as the story goes. The word Schuller, you'll like this as a theologian, spelled correctly with one L, means scholar. So if you're going to misspell a word, please don't misspell scholar. But in fact, 2L Schullers didn't know how to spell the word scholar in German. What's more, you'll like this. When you read the Bible in German, the word Schuller, spelled correctly with one L, also means disciple. So that Jesus, when Jesus speaks German in a German Bible, Jesus says to his disciples, unless you be my Schuller, I will have, I will have nothing to do with you. And so those 12 Schullers apparently couldn't get it right. So we're lousy disciples.
Well, now I will tell you, in Springfield, Ohio, my hometown, there is a bakery there, and a Schuller's Bakery with a 1L.
Correct.
So that's the reason. So you see, I've had all those donuts as a kid growing up, and I've become a disciple. So there you go. That's work.
Right. They are true disciples and true scholars, your bakers.
Wow. That is something else. Well, I'll make sure that Robert and Donna Schuller see this video, and so they can be aware of that. I'm sure they are. But anyway, well, that's good. Okay, good history. So what's on the plans for Epiphany and Chris Schuller these days?
Well, I have, this is something I've done. I did at my two previous parishes. When I was in Jessup, Georgia, I quickly discovered, Michael, that in the air, in the water, in the very part of the South was a sense that church people not only go Sunday, but go Wednesdays too. And even Episcopalians who grew up in Jessup, Georgia, a little bit had, drunk the Southern water. And what I started was a Wednesday ministry of all things in an Episcopal church, where we'd have dinner together and get together for a half-hour service. I called it Supper, Song, and Praise. And somewhere along the way, somebody also started calling it Supper, Song, and Prayer. And it's sort of, to this day, I let it be called either one, and we just call it SSP. But it worked there. It started off with the last week that I was in Jessup, Georgia, we had 90 people on a Wednesday night at a tiny little Episcopal parish.
Wow.
There's a few little tricks to it. I never call it potluck. I go, no, this is family. If you leave your office and you can't make it here till 5 after 6, do not worry about stopping to buy a chicken. God will always provide plentifully, and God always has every week I've ever done it. And we did it when I went to St. Petersburg, Florida. It was a much bigger parish. We did it on a grander scale. And I started it here in November. And again, we had the good chefs and the crock pots, and Episcopalians bring their bottles of wine and beer along with the Diet Coke and apple juice. And the other thing is about the service that then starts at 7. I've always had people of the congregation offer the message. And if you know about the Episcopal Church, we're not known for our testimonials or our witnessing. But if you ask people to share their biggest grace moments, they all have some. And it's been a beautiful thing. Well, we started doing Supper, Song, and Praise COVID edition about 4 months ago. without the feast. We said feast at home, just log in at 7:00. The attendance
Sure.
here, we got up to as maybe high as 50 people on the Wednesdays coming and eating, drinking, and then worshiping. The slowest virtual edition of Supper Song and Praise we have is about 250 or 300 viewings.
Wow.
And keep in mind, some of those viewings are like, there's a family of 4 in Henderson that all sit on the couch together. It counts as one viewing, but it's all 4 of them watching every Sunday morning
Sure.
and every Wednesday evening. And so it's been this
Wow, that's
blooming
tremendous.
ministry. And I will be doing that this very evening. And we'll have a special guest speaker who's an incredible woman of victory and faith power. And she's going to give her a 10-minute talk. We're going to sing an old folksy hymn, and God will be praised virtually, and we're making do. And I have no idea.
Wow, that is
Nobody
tremendous.
does, Michael. I have no idea when we'll have the crock pots back and be gathering in person, whether that's 6 weeks from now or 56 weeks from now. Only God knows.
Yeah, that's right. And we have to just have faith and walk in the area which he has provided, walk down the path which he is guiding us on, and make
Amen.
sure that we don't veer off of that path and go straight forward and do what we need to do. Well, Chris, it's been a joy having you on here as a guest today, and I appreciate your time so much. And tell people now, once again, on Facebook, do you have a page for the Epiphany?
Oh, yes. That's how we launch our live streams live through our Facebook page, the Epiphany Episcopal Church Las Vegas, on Facebook. Okay. And then because of our tech guys working so hard and well, it's usually uploaded onto YouTube within a matter of an hour or two.
Gotcha.
And we had
gotcha.
Just in COVID, we've put over 200 videos on YouTube. So we're abundantly out there. People want to search Epiphany Episcopal Church Las Vegas, or my name, Chris Schuller. I have a lot of stuff online.
Sure. Yeah, that's how I found you. And listen, I appreciate the friendship and the fellowship. And I just thank each and every one of you for viewing today, that whatever you're going through, God will get you through it. And like a preacher that I knew years ago, he's gone now to be with the Lord, but he would close out his radio broadcast by saying, "You don't have any trouble. All you need is faith in God." And I like that. I like that. That's cool. Well, listen, folks, thank you so much for being with us today, and we appreciate you very much. And I praise the Lord for all that he's done for us and for what he's going to do. And here every Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. And my church is right here in Greensburg, Indiana, Faith Points Lutheran Orthodox Church. And hey, just reach out to us, either one of us, Chris Schuller, Michael Lane. We're both on Facebook, and we'd be glad to work with you. If you need prayer, we would love to hear from you and pray for you. And because I think prayer is the way that's going to get us through a lot of this stuff these days. And that's really what we need a whole lot of, that God wants us to be. So that being said, the Lord bless you, watch over you, keep you, and may his face shine upon you, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Chris, God bless you, brother.
God bless you, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
All right. You're welcome, sir. Talk to you later. Bye now.
Bye-bye.